Hello class, welcome to Psychology 305, History and Systems of Psychology with Professor Michelle Carlin. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Thomas Faulkner. I am a student this semester, and the week 3 description said to have fun with this forum post. So I decided to provide a little bit of insight of my own to kind of give a one-on-one discussion about the anatomy of the brain and how it correlates biology and psychology into these topics. Bear with me now. I am by far no newscaster. I'm not a perfect speaker, but this message should be generally easy to pass through. So allow me to get started here. Let's pull up the documentation. Starting off with the basic anatomy of the brain. The most superficial layer of the brain, which I'm touching right here, is called the cortex. There's different layers that protect the brain. Obviously, you have your brain encased in a cranium. In your cranium, you peel back the cranium, and when you try to take the cranium off, there's going to be this substance that kind of bonds the brain to the bone, or this bone to the brain, and this is called the dura mater. Excuse my accent. The dura mater, and this can be simply removed by placing a wedge and just getting around. Beneath that, you'll have the filmy layer of the arachnoid, which is the main responsibility of producing the cerebrospinal fluid, or the little villi that protrude through the sinuses. That's deeper into the anatomy lectures, and I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. Underneath that, you have the pia mater, and the pia mater is something that you can think of. If I have any anatomy junkies out there, would be a visceral membrane. A visceral membrane is a membrane that sticks to the organ. You would not be able to remove the pia mater from the brain without damaging the brain itself. Continuing on odd topics here. Moving on, there are obvious grooves and fissures in the brain. I don't know how well you can see with the quality of the camera, but common sense will tell you that there are general grooves or gyruses in the brain, or these deep fissures, which are called the sulcus. So these grooves in the brain give us more surface area, shall I say. These kind of allow us to store more information other than just a flat surface. With all these grooves and incorporating the brain, laid out, we'd have the brain is approximately about 75 centimeters squared in a surface area, which is around 2.5 feet. 2.5 feet for all you non-metric fans out there. Moving on, the brain has different sections, or different lobes, shall I say. You have your frontal, which is the most anterior, which is facing you to the front. You can call it caudal, as in rottal, because the rat has the nose, and caudal would be tail, because a rat has a tail. Basic animal stuff. Moving along, you have your frontal section, which is primarily associated with higher level thinking and functioning, and more of our human emotions. This is what makes us empathetic, altruistic, the stuff that makes you, your personalities, and all of that other great stuff. The major dividing line, I don't know if you can see it through the camera light, I'll say it again, is the superior frontal sinus, or gyrus, the central sulcus. I did say that right. Divides the central sulcus. And this central sulcus will play a major part later on down the road when we discuss the precentral gyruses and postcentral gyruses. However, moving along, you have your superior lateral fissure right here. Fissure is just an interchangeable word from sulcus, which distinguishes your temporal lobe. Your temporal lobe is associated with your smelling and your sound, your olfactory. Flip the brain over, you can see that your temporal lobe right here, you have your olfactory bulbs actually protruding out. These yellow nerve fibers, as depicted on my model, would actually provide the sensory information from the external nose. Moving along, you have your parietal section, which is primarily associated with your sensory information. This being said, there are two major areas I want to discuss right now that kind of correlate the difference between biology and psychology. First off is the more of an anatomical feature. You have your primary motor area right here, which is around the precentral gyrus area. And this, if you can imagine cutting your brain like this. If I were to take a knife and cut the brain down like this to where you can see, this is where the brain works in the premotor area at the precentral gyrus, and this is primarily responsible for all of your voluntary skeletal movements. And this is just anterior meaning towards the front to the precentral, or to the central sulcus right here. Moving along to the somatosensory area, which is post-central gyrus, which is more posterior to the central sulcus. You have your touch and your pain sensation. A famous doctor, I don't know if you guys have heard of him, Dr. Penfield, did early experiments where he would take a charged electrode and tap different aspects of the brain in the primary somatosensory area. And what this did, this has allowed him to take notes and to incorporate what sections of the brain deal with what portion of the body. There's a very famous picture. It's called, he developed a homunculus, and it's where, again, it's depicted to where the brain is cut, a frontal cut, right along this line, and there are different body parts aligned throughout the section. If you split the brain sagittally, remember sagittal, you have your sagittal fissure right here in your brain, in your cranium. So that's a great way to remember it. Sagittal, coronal, transverse, you'll never forget, or axial. There's different terms depending on where you use. So just imagine this right here. Remember, we are associating this with the post-central gyrus. So starting along this line right here, if you can see, there's still neocortex in this area. This would be where the feet articulate, and there's not so much feeling right in here, but as you move along right in here, there's a larger section for your hands and your face, especially your lips and your tongue, your swallowing, your chewing, your vocalization is more inferior to the section. Allow me to put my brain back together. Bear with me for a second. So that's this. That's where we can, as psychologists and neuroscientists, biologists, we can collaborate and visualize the different physiological areas of the brain and really get a true understanding of what we're working with and how this marvelous organ works. Moving to the posterior side of the brain, posterior, tomato, tomato, you have your visual association area, and again, this is where most of your visual sensory information is processed. And going back again to the gustatory area, like I said before, the gustatory area is at the lateral post-central gyrus. So if we use the anatomical terms lateral, meaning towards the outside, post-central gyrus. So we would talk about right in here, lateral post-central gyrus, because we are lateral and at the post-central gyrus area. Moving along, we have these little bodies right here. I don't know if you can see this, but this is your cerebellum. Your cerebellum is associated with your integration and your coordination in your body. Just imagine this is like your body coordinates the information, it analyzes it, and it redistributes it to the different aspects of the brain where it needs to go. Take, for example, another great way to study the evolution of the brain. Neuroscientists have hypothesized and theorized that the most primitive aspects of the brain are the most inferior, and being the neocortex up here, which is meaning new bark, if you want to translate that in Latin, this is the most recently evolved section of the brain. So as you're coming into the brain stem right here, you have your central nervous system coming in. As soon as you enter the foramen magnum, and that's right back here, you can follow your occipital, my favorite word, your external occipital protuberance. Just follow that down till you hit about that hole right here, to where you have your axis and your atlas vertebrae. So right above your atlas and your axis vertebrae is you'll have your foramen magnum, and it's basically just this hole where information can come through from your spinal cord. Moving up in here, the first bit of primitive brain would be the medulla. Medulla moving up into the pons and the cerebellum. This midbrain is the diencephalon. Like I said, it's the most primitive sections of the brain. These parts also include the the brainstem would be the midbrain, the pons, the medulla oblongata. The diencephalon would include the thalamus, hypothalamus, and your pineal gland right in here. Moving along, going back to your cerebellum, this is the place where all of your input sensory information comes to be coordinated, analyzed, and redistributed. Another cool, I find cool, but neat aspect of the cerebellum is the concept of proprioception. Proprioception is basically just the idea of me knowing my body in the space and time. So without looking, I can assume, unconsciously you should say, that my feet are underneath the table and they are crossed right now. I don't have to think about that to know where my feet are, but I can bring that into conscious thought. And the cerebellum can help us do this. Moving along, the pons is the bridge that connects the cranial canals, all that great stuff. I won't get into the diencephalon aspects of the brain. I will say that for another day. But I do want to appreciate you taking the time to watch this video with me and have this learning experience. It's always a great opportunity to test your knowledge of a subject when you're out in front of your audience or out in front of your peers actually teaching the information. That pretty much covers my intentions of the video. In conclusion, I want to add, that biology is the root, is root for any substance you study in life, whether you study the physiology of the stomach, the running posture, anything. biology is the root science you want to look for to help you better explain things. And some of you watching this may ask how psychology comes in. Why is it important to learn biology in this field? And I want to reassure you that some of you might go out there and become therapists, and some of this information will be great for you when you try to incorporate the use of drugs and the effects on the brain of the drugs. Biology will be a great example on how you can explain the different aspects of the brain and chemical release of the neurotransmitters through action potential. For those people who want to be researchers and study different diseases, there's plenty of potential to understand the biological functions and psychopathology of diseases. Biology plays such a vital role, and I really stress that you do appreciate this subject. Take everything, as I tell everybody, take everything as a skeptic. There are levels of, I would say, skepticity up to where you can skepticize on different things. You don't have to skepticize. You don't have to question me if I'm holding a brain or not. Common sense can tell you that. But if information that I am coming across or I'm putting out is wrong, I encourage anybody to come up and instruct. I encourage somebody to point this out, so that way we both have a learning experience. Because in the field of science, it's not about I'm right, you're wrong. Most of the time, a scientist likes or loves to be proven wrong. I know I've been proven wrong several times in my hypotheses, going back to when I was in before I enlisted the military and was in a pre-med program. But it's a humbling feeling, because there are always people out there who are going to know us a little bit more in a subject than you are. And if you take that opportunity and kind of grasp something from it, that'll be the most effective tool for your educational system. So I will leave you with that right here. I bid you guys a farewell and enjoy your week 3. I once again am Thomas Faulkner. Good night, everybody.